College, a couple years in Alaska, a few years in North Carolina, and then finally finished my graduate degree at U of H.
Okay, very good. And how did you get interested in the whole idea of human trafficking? Because I have to say, you know, I think it was 12 years ago or so that I became interested, and you were one of the first people to introduce me, right? I remember you and I and Stephen Goff.
Yeah.
We went out and we visited a bunch of cantinas. We went inside. What got you interested in doing all that stuff?
Well, there's a long version and a short version. I think the long version is...
We have long version time here.
Oh, that's good.
But I'll cut you off if it goes too long.
Okay, well, you know, in 1963 when John F. Kennedy was shot, that made a big impression on me. And I think everyone my age and older, like, remembers watching this on TV. And I remember seeing this. I was only 3 years old, but I remember just the feeling of the whole nation. And I think that helped me begin to think sociologically.
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time I was thinking sociologically, but I was thinking of how that one event impacted the whole nation.
Yeah.
And there was something that opened up in my heart where I knew I wanted to be a warrior and I had justice on my heart from that moment. Do you know what I mean? Because I was so sad about that, and I was just 3, and nobody explained it to me. But then when I was 8 years old, my dad took me to meet Robert Kennedy.
Wow.
Because he had like press credentials, and that made a big impression on me too. So I knew that I was destined to always work for the underserved and the underclass. And then I became a sociology professor. Mm-hmm. And I taught the issues of social justice, global migration statistics, and all that. And I found that young females of every society were in the crosshairs. I mean, they bore the brunt of all the social change in every society that I studied. And so it just seemed like the next natural thing was to work for the ending of sex slavery.
And what was your introduction to sex slavery? When did you first find out that it was happening and started, where did that outrage come from?
I was teaching at HCC Southwest campus, and somehow I was teaching like one of the units that had to do with trafficking, like labor trafficking, human trafficking generally. And at the same time, I got an email from a friend advertising an immersion course at the University of San Francisco, the Urban Studies Institute. And so I opened that email, and somehow I made the connection that, oh my gosh, it's happening like right where I'm teaching, within 3 miles of where I was teaching the class.
Wow.
So I went to that immersion course and spent 10 days immersed in the issue. And then I came back, and it was like, Katie, bar the door. I hijacked all of my sociology classes for this issue after that.
What year was that?
Oh, heck, like 2007.
Yeah.
And so I continued teaching till 2011, and then I just got too busy, and so I...
Because it probably was 2007 or 2006 or so that we went out, right?
Yeah,
when we started visiting these places. There are a lot of myths surrounding human trafficking, right? You and I come up against them every day. Mm-hmm. And I know I think maybe 2006, I wrote an op-ed for the Houston Chronicle where I said, Houston is the hub of human trafficking in America. I was later at a conference, and I met some people from different cities, and they said, oh, Atlanta's the hub of human trafficking in America. Mm-hmm. And someone from Phoenix said, oh, I understand Phoenix is the hub of human trafficking. And someone from LA. Why is it that, talk about cities as hubs for human trafficking.
Okay. Yeah, this is a good one. You know that toothpaste commercial, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend or Trident sugarless gum. So statistics are funny things. Mm-hmm. And you have to carefully parse out what you're quoting a statistic about, right? So you're not like quoting alternative facts.
Right. That's important.
Yes.
But there are a lot of alternative facts in trafficking, though, aren't there?
There seems to be.
Yeah.
There seems to be. So you have to figure out, like, Atlanta, a lot of cities claim number one slot, right? Atlanta, from what I can gather and what I read, is number one for pedophilia, right? Phoenix is number one for immigrant trafficking. And so all the cities claim number one slot, maybe in their category, like their subgrouping or whatever. But I do know this. University of Arizona did a study of men who would click through on an ad to purchase sex. They studied 15 major cities. Atlanta was one, San Francisco, Phoenix, Miami. And Houston was number one in the percentage of men between 18 and 65 who would click through on an ad to purchase sex online, with 21.4% of men clicking through. So the next highest was Kansas City, of all places, 17.2%, and the lowest was San Francisco with 0.06%.
Clicking through.
And
I think Houston was number 2 in terms of number of ads, right? It was.
Yes.
But more click-throughs.
Yes, Houston had, even on a non-busy weekday, Houston's ads were more than double what Newark had during the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So, yeah. So I don't know. Statistically, we can parse it out very carefully and make sure. But what I do know is that when you have a city that has a paradigm of male entitlement, disposable income, that is also this close to the border, that's the perfect storm. And so Houston has 9 major oil headquarters, each with almost 10,000 employees each, and almost 300 oil service companies. So that's a lot of men with disposable income. And when you mix that with a paradigm of male entitlement, translate not confronting the demand side of this equation, right? So if it's hands off the consumer side, that promotes male entitlement. So when you have all that, it's the perfect storm.
I've often told the story about when I arrived in Houston to interview at Rice University, right? I flew into Intercontinental Airport. This was in the 80s. And the taxi driver immediately started telling me about how I'm going to love Houston because there are lots of strip clubs and sexually oriented businesses. This was my introduction to Houston. And I'm not sure that it's changed very much, right, since then in terms of men coming to Houston and understanding that there's a lot of this stuff going on. When we look at numbers compared to other Texas cities in terms of sexually oriented businesses, there's over 400 in Houston, and then in the next highest is San Antonio with 140, and then Dallas. Why is it that Houston, though, more than other Texas cities? Because you think Dallas is just as rich, but more sexually oriented businesses here.
I don't know. I was just doing some research on the history of Texas, and especially Galveston. And in 1943, okay, this is where nerd alert. In 1943,
we already knew this.
Yeah. 1943, the syphilis rate for the population was 48 in 1,000 for the whole population in the nation. In Galveston, the Galveston region, it was 148 per 1,000.
Wow.
Right? So in 1943, Galveston had 54 brothels and 900 prostituted women. And so Galveston, as the gateway to Texas and like the port city of Texas, they called it what did they call it? The something of the South. The Coney Island of the South. Set a trajectory for the region, I believe. Do you understand, what I'm saying? And then also, and this is where it gets a little wacky, we're a faith-based organization, right? So we're unapologetic about that. And by faith-based, I do not mean humanitarian aid, all right? Where good church ladies come with a basket of cookies and wring their hands. That's not what I mean. Here's what I mean. When I was tracing like the spiritual history of the area, I discovered that the whole of the Gulf Coast from the Yucatan all the way up through Texas into Louisiana was a region called the Campeche region. And there was a tribe there of Quiche Indians. It was the first recorded society that bred humans for slavery and sacrifice. Yeah. And so there are covenants in effect that predate the Mayflower Compact or whatever other covenants, the covenant that made Texas a state. There are covenants in effect that predate that set the trajectory for the region. And these are spiritual covenants, or, if you will, metaphysical, right? So they're not an artifact of material culture, but they dictate the trajectory of the region, nonetheless. Do you understand? Does anyone understand what I'm saying? Okay, yeah.
It's sort of like bad sexual karma here? Is that
yes,
slavery
absolutely.
karma?
Yeah, I mean, these things are real. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'm not just talking about, curanderismo or, voodoo or whatever, although that stuff is real. But if
But it doesn't mean we can't change it.
Right. Yes, we can change it.
Yeah.
But if you try to engage this battle and you're deliberately ignorant of the unseen forces in this battle, you probably will encounter some futility and burnout.
Yeah. When we see all of this stuff that's happening here, though, it almost makes me feel like, and I said this the other day to some staff, it's like we've met the enemy and the enemy is us, right?
Indeed.
And it's our population in Houston that needs the culture that needs to change. It's not OTC necessarily. It's not the Super Bowl. We're the ones that are creating this demand.
Yeah, exactly. Look, we have 2 churches in the top 10 largest congregations in North America. Second Baptist is 52,000 people. Lakewood has 43,000 people. And there are 25,000 churches, at least with an internet footprint, in the Houston area. The highest time of downloading porn or looking at pornography is Sunday afternoon.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard this before.
Look at this. Look at the stats. 64% of youth pastors report actively seeking out pornography. 53% of senior pastors report actively seeking out pornography.
What's that all about?
Here's what it's about. I would propose to you that religion, particularly, Puritan evangelical religion, without the reality of a relationship with Jesus Christ, actually promotes the anxiety that leads to perversion and pornography. In other words, and here's my hypothesis, as a sociologist, religion up, sex trafficking up.
Wow.
And I would like to be funded for a study to demonstrate.
Okay, let me ask you about, because I think of all the modern day abolitionists, you have a lot of experience, Kat, sort of like going into a lot of these establishments. Talk about, going in and what you're finding, and we went to La Cosanita, but you're still going into some of these places, right? I gave that up,
Yeah.
But you're still going into these places. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I started to get a little bit recognizable, and so
I don't believe that.
Go
you
figure,
seem to fit
right?
in, though. So.
So what I changed my strategy a little bit, and I said, look, I'm going to train hundreds of people to go in my place. Mm-hmm. And so we started doing that. Oh, I wish I had that number. We average about 75 people a month.
That go in?
That go in. Mm-hmm. And so we train them for like 5 minutes and then send them into the most dangerous situation.
You guys don't have insurance or anything.
We have a little bit of liability. Certainly not enough to cover it.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that out. Thank you. So we try to still continue going in. And it's still as heinous as it was when we started.
Yeah.
And you guys, the superstition and religion that's involved in all of the places we go in is still, I mean,
talk about going into it, because I'm going to guess that outside of you and I, no one else has been into some of these places. So talk about what that looks like as you go into some of these bars.
Okay.
Cantinas.
Okay, cantina, for example. It's late at night. You're with some people that you either know or don't know. You have the guys sit in the car and wait, never leave the car unattended. You get out, you go up to the door, you pass a taco truck. You may pass a little bit of harassment on your way in. I've been cussed out a few times on my way in. It's because people recognize me. Mm-hmm. You'll pass a security guard.
Fake police people,
right? Fake police.
Yep.
You know, there's one, you know the Blue Star? Do you remember the Blue Star down on McCarty? Mm-hmm. You drove by it, I know. Mm-hmm. The fake cop is from Afghanistan, of all places.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, anyway, so you pass the fake cop, put your hand on the door, the music is bumping, you fling the door open, you walk in, all eyes are on you. Mm-hmm. Music is loud, lights are low, and your eyes begin to adjust to the darkness, and you begin to see unescorted women in very little clothing sitting all around the wall. Some are dancing with customers, some are drinking with the customers. And then if you will sit down and pretend to drink a beer, or actually drink a beer, as the case may be, and you'll begin to watch, the women will disappear for 20 minutes or so with a customer. They'll go either into one of the restrooms or into the back and out the back door.
Ages of the girls?
Every cantina, you know, we see what looks to be a minor in a cantina pretty much every other month at least. Mm-hmm. At least 6 times a year we see a minor in a cantina.
Or someone who looks very young.
Yeah, someone who looks very young.
And all the way up to like 35 or so, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I mean, what did we expect? What did we expect?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then when you see these girls, what's happening when they disappear into the bathroom or behind the bathroom door?
Well, we imagine that's where the sex work is taking place. Mm-hmm. And many of the cantinas have the interior dimensions don't match an aerial view of the cantina. Or there will be an outbuilding or a gap in the fence and a house on the other side of the fence where it's just back and forth.
Now, Elijah Rising took over a building that once held some of these things. Talk a little bit about that, and talk about the museum you guys have.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. 5818 Southwest Freeway, that's our office building.
And it's worth visiting, right?
Yes.
People should write it down. Do you have to pay to visit?
No.
Yeah, 5818
Southwest Freeway. All right, here's what happened. So I started doing these van tours, right? Like you guys.
Yeah.
But I started mine because I was offered a job investigating sexually oriented businesses, which is weird because I guess my background, like my first job after my graduate degree was interviewing out-of-treatment drug users. So I guess I was on some list of people who weren't scared of whatever, you know. So anyway, they called me up and offered me this job. So I investigated sexually oriented businesses, kept all my field notes, sent them to the company, and then I started taking people with me to look. And you got to see what I saw last night, and that's what turned into the van tour. And then this place that we're now officed at and has the museum was a stop on our van tour. It was the Angela Day Spa. And we had done some outreach to the place, so we had experience with women in there, what was going on inside. And we always do our research for backstory for the places we drive people by. So I know who owns the brick and mortar. I know, like, how, you know, whatever I can find. Because I will Google stalk somebody. Anyway, so I would always say the landowner of the place. And every time I said his name, someone would pull out their phone and be, oh, you mean this guy? Because he was the flag football coach for his kids' team. His kids go to a very prominent high school. And so I was very careful to say, well, that doesn't mean he's a trafficker, but he's certainly benefiting.
Yep.
He was getting $10,000 a month cash for the building, which you will see, right? When you go in the kitchen, you like go downhill, and there's a hole in the, it's just Anyway, so he heard that I was saying his name, so he filed a defamation lawsuit.
Oh, really?
Which I was so excited about. I was excited about the prospect of going to court with this guy, because deposition would have been hell on him. Mm-hmm. Trust me. And so he knew he couldn't scare me, so he was like, okay, tell you what, how about if I evict the bad guys and lease it to you for less than a third of what I'm making now? I'm like, that would be acceptable. Yes, that will be acceptable. I'll sign your little lease if you also take the nude statues off your other property, 1 block away. Mm. So he capitulated, and that's how we got the building.
And tell me about the little museum, because you have a little room there that's much like these rooms in cantinas.
Yes. Yes. Well, also the first thing I did when we got that lease was I wanted to find someone who was trafficked in our office. Because, look, referring back to the unseen forces, I knew that what we had to do was ask her for forgiveness. You understand? And so I had this sort of ceremony where I got everybody to buy a present and line up, give this lady a present, and say, I'm sorry for what I allowed to happen to you in my city. Will you forgive me? And so we had that before we even took up residency in the office. So you've got to deal with things in the unseen realm. What was the question? What did you ask me?
I can't remember. You were so fascinating, Kathy. No, the little room.
The little room.
Oh, yeah. And so then it had 6 showers in the back, which is expensive to remodel, like all that plumbing. So we just painted it dark gray and put information boards, and artifacts that we had gotten from places that had been closed that we were doing outreach to. And then in one of the shower rooms, we built a replica of a cantina sex room from the new Backdoor Club. And I happened to be friends with the foster mom of one of the girls who came to testify in that case. Mm-hmm. And we went out to dinner one night, and me and the mom and the girl, and came back to the museum, showed her the place, and she said, yeah, this is exactly like the room I worked in. And then she said something that I will never forget, and I don't want you to forget it. She said, I didn't know anyone knew what was happening to me. I never forgot that.
What is she doing now?
She is working at a law office in just outside Mexico City. Yeah. So she's doing okay.
So often, and I know I'm digressing a little bit, but so often, we hear some of the good stories of what happens to these girls, but we also know a lot of them sort of return to working in the sex industry, don't they?
Yes. I hear the recidivism rate is up to 75%. Meh.
But we're not doing a really good job of treating victims, though, are we?
Well, no. I think we need to innovate. Mm-hmm. We definitely need to innovate. Our staff has a therapist that the whole staff sees that is out of the box, does tapping, eye movement, muscle testing, things that are a little bit off the beaten path. And I think we owe it to the women to innovate. Mm-hmm. So we have equine therapy, our staff therapist, heck, anything. I'll do anything.
So tell me about your farm that you have now, because is it going to be a safe house as well? Is that what? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Because it's not everyone who has a farm.
No.
I mean, except for farmers. But,
yeah, right? Yeah. A bunch of city kids all moved out there.
Yeah. And you live out on the farm now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why I was a little late. We said we were going to... Nah, never mind. The farm. So 2 years ago, I felt that still small voice. And the still small voice was saying, you can't continue doing outreach unless you're ready to be part of the aftercare pipeline. And so I was like, okay, I'm in. And so this property came available. It was listed for $2.2 million. And I wrote a letter of faith. And I said, I believe God wants me to have this property, and I'll give you $750,000 for it.
Wow.
Signed, Cat. I didn't have $750,000. I didn't have $2.2 million either. And so much to my astonishment, they accepted my offer.
Oh, wow.
But the 700 Club, you know that Christian TV show,
Yeah,
700 Club, they came down and they said, hey, Kat, we love what you're doing. Can we give you $75,000? And I said, well, sure, that would be fine. And that was before I knew that they had accepted my offer of $750,000. So I had the 10% down before I even knew I needed it.
Wow.
And the rest has been a series of equally astonishing miracles. How
That's sort of a little miracle, isn't it?
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, and like pretty much on a weekly basis, we have some kind of miracle happening at the farm.
I want to get back to this idea of you guys being faith-based and how different, though, that is, because I've spoken at a lot of churches, you've spoken at a lot of churches, and the church community, the community of faith really wants to be involved in the fight in this issue. And as a matter of fact, some of our great advances have come because sometimes communities of faith have been involved. But how are you different than those other communities?
Isn't that interesting?
Or are you different?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I still have all the,
You don't look like a church lady.
I know.
Yeah.
I tried all my life. I still hold very dearly to the tenets of orthodoxy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I believe the same thing as all of them. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just more aggressive.
Yeah. You're quirkier, right?
Seem to be. I don't have any friends my age in the church community.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know what it is.
Okay.
Okay, so I was tested on the Asperger scale a little bit, and I don't have the fear chip. So I don't feel fear ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that alienates some of the people of my demographic. Shall we say? I don't know. It works for me, though. I mean, it's fun, right? I don't know. Now I'm embarrassed.
That's a little embarrassed. You have the embarrassment gene, though. I guess not the fear. Tell me about some of the victims that you've come into contact with, and take me through sort of their process from how did they get into trafficking, and how have you helped them get out of it?
All right.
Even if it's not one that you've dealt with, but you know sort of the story.
Oh, no, this is all personal, like
Okay.
personal
Okay.
encounters. Okay, one Colombian lady came to the States when she was 14. She was raised in a family that had this room in their house that was off limits. And the room was full of teddy bears stuffed with cocaine.
Oh, wow.
And so her family was probably working with Pablo Escobar. She started being sold for sex by her family when she was 2 years old. And then...
was it her family, or was she related to these?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So her mom started selling her for sex at age 2. So then, obviously it's a no-brainer that she winds up at 5806 Southwest Freeway. She said that the not Mama Son, because it's a domestic, the manager lady there, her name...
Go ahead. It's only on Facebook Live.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, no. Okay, look. I may have already said too much. Anyway, the manager lady would take the girls to her psychic. And the psychic would tell the girls that they have a curse on their lives.
Oh, wow.
And that only that psychic knew how to clear it, but it would be $2,000. And then Gia would agree with the psychic to pay him $2,000, whether they actually pay or not.
Right.
And if not, then it's racketeering. And then Gia said, well, you can just pay me back by working at 5806. That is classic trafficking.
Yeah.
That's force, fraud, coercion. Okay, so that's
What's
how
the
this
name of 5806?
adult studio.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how this girl got caught up, trapped in the trade, and couldn't leave 5806 because she was afraid of a curse. You understand? So look, the bad guys
And
deal.
How old was this girl at the time?
When she first started, I'm going to say 27.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, she had been in it since age 2.
She'd been sexually abused the whole time.
Yeah. So look, the bad guys deal with the unseen forces. The bad guys use the unseen forces to keep girls in it. So Christians should use the unseen forces too. We need angels and demons to move.
Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening with this young woman?
How did it happen? Okay, it was a good story. So we moved in a couple doors down at 5818,
Mm-hmm.
and this lady, the girl, came to us, walked in, and started cussing us out because, I don't know.
Right.
I figure if you go through a day without getting cussed out, it's like a wasted day. So anyway, they came in, cussed everybody out.
That's how my days are. Anyway.
Yeah, right? And then a year later, this girl came in by herself and said, I had no idea. If I had known then what I know now, I would have never done that. She had started going to church with some friend of a friend. She went to Sugar Creek, gave her life to Jesus, got baptized, started walking with the Lord, and then came back to us when she needed a place to live. So that's how it came.
Wow. So often when you and I will speak in public, people will say, well, why don't we just go and rescue these girls? Like they want to be rescued. Talk about how that isn't really how it is.
Nice. Okay, look. So we helped launch all right, when we go on outreach, we pass out a phone number. And the phone number rings to Rescue Houston. And Rescue Houston has an army of volunteers, and they will scramble a team to go pick up a girl wherever she is and take her to a safe place. And so we started to do some metrics on the phone number we're passing out. We discovered that when they get the lipstick, if they call between...
The phone number's on the lipstick?
Yeah. Between immediately and 1 week later, at 30 days later, they're back in the trade. They've gone back. If they call the number between 21 days and 30 days later, at 30 days, they are still out. You understand what that statistic is saying? That if they will wait, pack a go bag, get their papers, get their kids' photographs, get their kids to a safe place, then call, at 30 days, they're still out. So metrics show that you can't go in and yank them out.
Mm-hmm.
They have to plan, and they can plan better than anyone to get themselves out.
Wow.
So,
So sometimes people ask me, how do we do a knockout punch to end trafficking, right? How do we end trafficking in Houston? And I have a whole thing that I go through, but what do you tell people when they say, how do we end trafficking in Houston?
I want to hear what you tell people.
You want to hear my thing?
Yeah.
I always say a 4-step process, right? It's one is raising a lot of awareness, which we've done a lot of. You guys do a lot of this, and a lot of groups. Pass a lot of laws to give prosecutors and law enforcement all the tools necessary to go after traffickers. Begin to treat the victims, which we haven't done a lot of. And then 4th is really focusing on prevention and ending demand, right? Changing the culture, and prevention includes sort of dealing with our foster care system, which a lot of the victims come out of.
True that.
So those are the 4 steps that I usually give. What would you say?
Yeah, that's probably...
You'd say, you're wrong, Bob. I wouldn't do that.
That's probably good. I don't know. Maybe I'm too idealistic. But I always figure, if we have to make laws that say, hey, let's not sell our children to people to have sex with them, we have a worse problem than lack of laws. Do you know what I'm saying? Holy Toledo. I mean, that doesn't mean that lobbying Austin is a waste of time. It's not. It's just that we have a deeper problem than
We do have a deeper problem, yeah.
And I would also propose to you that any solution that's offered that does not address demand is no solution at all. And it actually schedules us for an increase in slavery. And so I do not mince words. Number 1 is stop demand. And then the rest, treat the victims, do outreach. But look, man, if awareness could have stopped this thing, it would be stopped by now.
Right.
Houston is one of the most aware cities I know.
How do you stop demand?
Excellent, Roseanne. How do you stop demand?
Sweden has already done it. Sweden has done it.
How'd they do it?
By making the purchase of sex a felony level offense with mandatory prison time. They focused on the purchaser, the procurer, and the promoter, or the trafficker, and the landlord. Any three of those is a felony level offense with mandatory prison time. And public shaming, which, why not?
Good.
So they passed laws.
Yes, they passed laws, but the laws turned the whole burden of the situation onto the purchaser, procurer, and promoter. So
It's called the Nordic model, right? Which is the idea is that you're not criminalizing the victims, the women or the young boys. You're criminalizing the purchasers. It's I think it's very interesting that when you look, we did an analysis of arrests around prostitution in the state of Texas. You know this, right? Is that what was it? Was it 95% of all the arrests in the state of Texas were the prostitutes?
Yeah.
Only 5% were the buyers, and that has changed in Houston, right? Houston has changed that, and HPD. Carla's here from HPD. What is it now, Carla? It's like.
Well, for this year, we're almost at 50-50.
Nice.
That's huge, though, right? Because most of the rest of the state is still in that 95% category. So, but it's only Houston, and is Lubbock the other city that has changed a lot too? Is that the other one? Jamie, is that Lubbock?
That's correct. Lubbock per capita does really well.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
But isn't it amazing? We're still arresting the girls who are trafficked instead of the purchasers.
Yeah, that is good progress, though.
Yeah. What do you make of, so Carla's here from HPD, and obviously HPD has a lot of new money, right, that they're able to go after traffickers, but that money came from that deal with all the strip clubs, right, that the city made. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the city made a deal that the 16 largest strip clubs would have to pay the city $1 million a year to fight trafficking, and then the city would drop the lawsuit against these 16 clubs. And law enforcement called, what did they call them, Carla? What does law enforcement call those 16 clubs?
Sweet 16.
Yeah, the Sweet 16. Carla doesn't really want to talk about that. What do you think about, is that sort of, I was in the paper calling it blood money, but is it, what do you think of that whole idea?
I don't know. We're so conflicted.
Right?
I'm conflicted.
Because without the money, right, we wouldn't be able to fight where we are, right?
Okay.
So what are you conflicted about?
Here's what I'm conflicted about. First of all, in order to get that money, we have to be in an official covenant with traffickers. Look up the Davari brothers, Davari. They own probably all of the 16 clubs, shell companies and whatnot. And so the Davari brothers give us $1 million. And okay, look, park outside their house one day and just watch what goes on. But look, if we are really depending on the institutions of society to solve this problem, then we have a huge major problem. Because the institution that we are looking to solve this problem is actually in alignment with the problem. You understand?
Yeah.
That's why, as a faith-based organization, we don't subscribe to the generational disempowerment that looks to the city and looks to the law enforcement to solve a spiritual, moral issue. Right? If I was looking to the city of Houston to solve this problem, I would be very disappointed. But I'm not. I'm looking to God and God alone.
Hoping that God will move the city along in the right way.
Yes. When the righteous are in authority, the city rejoices.
We have a couple of questions I know out there. Yes.
Well, having heard Kat speak a few times, I first want to say I'm probably, if not your biggest fan, like your number 2 fan.
Thank you.
But I don't stalk you. But I do adore you.
I went to lunch with Tracy. All she could talk about was you. I thought, what's the deal with this? And she's just talking
No, I
about
was
you.
like, you know, Bob, really, have you heard Kat? Yeah, I talked to Kat. So anyway, of course they invited me here today, but I just have to say, what you're doing is amazing. But I think the people in this room, what you didn't touch on today was what shocked me. Not only had I gone on your sex traffic tour and we got out of the van and they immediately locked the locks and we're like, hey, you're live on Facebook and does your wife know where you are? We did all that, but then, lo and behold, she comes and speaks to Spring Branch Independent School District at the administration facility. And even more shocking, because I'm a professional philanthropist. I'm out there every day. I'm in 4 schools. I mentor kids. I'm raising money and awareness every time I turn around. But all these moms from Memorial and from Hunters Creek Elementary, where my son attends, and Memorial High School and Spring Branch Middle, they were there. And there was a wait list and a line 40 deep to get in that evening to hear Kat and a father talk about his rescuing of his daughter and her recovery. Can you just, and I was just talking to your gala chair, Jacqueline, on the way over,
cool.
and she was telling me that, God, she was just telling me another story of another girl in Katy who, like, was also, I call it kidnapped. I mean, basically if your children disappear and go off into the wrong element, to me it's kidnapping. But can you address some of that? Because I don't know if everyone here realizes it's not just from Colombia transferring over or from Thailand. It's occurring in our school system, and it's starting earlier.
Talk a little bit about that, Kat.
Who would have ever dreamed that our society would look like this? I mean, I never thought. I had dreams of the end times when I was a kid, but I never factored this part in. The sex part. Yeah. Look, if a trafficker can make $150,000 a year on a fresh girl, do you really think that they are going to avoid the schools? Recruiters are in school. I mean, we had one situation, okay, like I said before, we have a private investigator on our staff, and we work with a search and recovery guy, hacker, private investigator, survivors, you know, with an axe to grind. And so we'll find people. We can find people. And believe me, I'm not above parking outside someone's house. So we had a situation, what was I saying? We had a situation in
Katy?
in Katy. Yeah, a school counselor sent me an email. I want to show you this text I just got from a student who says that her friend sent her a text that said, I have friends who can finance your dreams. Meet me after school, blah, blah, blah. And the counselor was like, this sounds like what you do. What do I do about this? And I'm like, yeah, that is what we do. That's what's happening. You are right. I mean, counselors down in Clear Lake High School intercepted a note between these 2 boys discussing how to transport high school girls to Dallas to sell them for sex. These are high school boys. So, yeah, it's happening in schools. I know one survivor who sat in English class with the guy who was trafficking her. He would pick her up at 1 a.m. and sell her to his gang friends, and then bring her back at 5 a.m. She'd take a nap and take a bath and go to school.
Where are the parents in all of this?
Giving them cell phones.
Other than lining out the streets.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I think one of the things that gets lost in this is that if we were to question some of these girls, sometimes they think they're still in this romantic relationship with that guy and they're being made to do all these things. So to parents, sometimes they're just saying, obviously parents aren't taking a good enough, they're not watching these kids closely enough, but they're trusting, they're trusting their daughter, and that daughter says, I was just out with my boyfriend, right? And when they should maybe not be trusting so much, right?
Yeah, I had a recent situation of, turns out she was 17 years old. And she was a child of, privilege and entitlement. And her parents owned a house in Estes Park, Colorado, and a house in, whatever, Richmond, Rosenberg, whatever. And the girl would just pitch a fit and want to go sleep with her 35-year-old lover who was also pimping her out. And she demanded that her mother buy her a ticket back to Estes Park, and her mom did. Yeah, well, she was pitching a fuss, so I'm going to send her back to her 35-year-old pimp. Okay, Mom. And so Dad was giving her a ride to the airport, and Dad pulled a fast one and said, no, you're going into a recovery program instead. The girl jumped out of a moving vehicle because she wanted to go to Estes Park where her pimp is. And then 911 came and blah, 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 brought her to us. Mm-hmm. Turned out she was 17, so she has to move into a RTC. But yeah, so, I mean, kids demand data on their phones. This girl demanded to go back to Estes Park. And come on, somebody grow a pair out there.
Let's do some more questions. Katie, you had a question?
Sure. I love your sociology approach to things. And you mentioned how we have here in Houston a paradigm of male entitlement and disposable income. And you talked about the need for a paradigm shift. How does that happen? I mean, we know, yes, we need to end the demand.
Well, I bet you that if you put the vice president of Halliburton on his face on a billboard and charge him a penalty that would hurt him, I bet that would help shift the paradigm pretty damn fast. Don't you think?
I would
Yeah.
imagine, yes.
Let's try it.
It's not very scary
agree.
for men in Houston, right, to buy girls.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That'd be Dad.
You would be surprised. You can subscribe to a data service called publicdata.com, and you can run people's license plates. And the people that I have found in brothels, the fundraising chair for the Republican National Committee, the athletic director for a very prominent private Christian high school, the list goes on. And I bet if you put their faces on billboards and charge them a penalty that would hurt them, we would turn this thing around.
Yeah, Jennifer. Oh, sorry.
Sociologically speaking, when you talk about before they become, the CEO or whatever for these companies, when does it start? I mean, I have a son. We talk about respect and those sort of things, but it feels like there must be. And I think about college and date rape and those. But is there a pivotal point? Is there you talk about what are the things that we need to be doing with our children to start early and not have to wait until they've already committed a crime or
Yeah.
Put their face on billboard.
That's a good question.
I don't know. I don't know. Here's what I've seen works. Some keyholes you have to pull your kids through. You can't push them through. Do you know what I mean? And so I bet that if you led an outreach team that passed out lipsticks, you could pull your kid through that keyhole. But better than you could push him through it. Do you know what I mean? Like, what if everybody in this room went out to the very battlefront and started to confront this thing? I bet your kids would think twice.
You think a stern talk from a father would be as good?
I don't know if the father also
It'd
took
be a start.
his two best friends.
What are you frowning at, Roseanne?
I just think they've got to have this moral compass instilled from early on in their family life. It's not a 17-year-old problem. It's 3, 4, 5. How did that family live? How did those parents interact? What messages did they send those kids? Something's really gone wrong with our culture when parents can just let kids do what they want to do and not involve themselves in setting this moral compass early on.
Yeah, but
I think there are a lot of boys that come from very good families, though, that end up doing this sort of stuff, right?
yes. Morality does not stand up against the unseen forces that we're dealing with. Do you understand? Morality will singe like a spider web when you're dealing with the types of big guns in the unseen realm.
And they
that we're
can't
dealing
tell the difference between right and wrong then?
It gets so fuzzy.
Wow.
You have kids?
3 boys. And now grandchildren.
What's the age range of your boys?
Well, now then you'll know I'm ancient and older than dirt.
Turns all teenagers. They're all teenagers.
No, they're in their 40s and 30s. So they've. But I have grandchildren coming up, and I see that they do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And they're 6, 4, and 2. And they do whatever they want to do. And it scares me.
Yeah, I think the main thing that parents have to transmit to the next generation is not like sexual morality, but confronting entitlement. That's number one, is entitlement.
There was another question back here. Yes.
I was just going back to when you were saying when you fill out the containers and run the license plate, how are these people not being caught or prosecuted?
Oh, man. I forgot her name.
Carla.
Carla knows. Like, there's a litany. You can't, yeah. First of all, you have to suspect prostitution. Correct me if I'm wrong. Suspect prostitution. Make a prostitution arrest. After you make a prostitution arrest, you have to go get a temporary restraining order. Catch them violating the temporary restraining order. Go back to the city attorney, get a permanent injunction. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, they can't just go in like the Texas Rangers. You know what I mean? Right?
Due process.
Due process.
Because in demand, though, you're talking about like these laws need to be, harsher and everything. So how these like complicated steps to actually prosecute somebody? How are we?
The only way is to do stings, right? That's the only way you catch like the vice president of Halliburton, the fundraising chair for the Republican National Committee, and catch some high-profile predators. And yeah, right, Carla?
Right. We wish that we had laws that would actually, replicate the Swedish model in some aspects, but in the state of Texas, prostitution is a misdemeanor, and it's equal for the seller or the buyer. So it's not much of a punishment. And unfortunately, unlike the prostitutes, the buyers have money. They have a regular job. They're able to hire attorneys. So, at the end of the day, to be able to arrest somebody, there's due process with that. You have to meet the elements of the crime, right? And meeting the elements of the crime is not just having a speculation that they're up to anything.
Carla, we need to have you and some HPD people up here to do modern day abolitionists, because you guys are, right, you'll come. Good. Let's do one or two more questions. Yeah.
What do you think is the role?
By the way, Emily is one of the, Emily and Jamie, they're some of the top anti-trafficking attorneys in the state of Texas. So,
Thank you.
What do you think is the role for educators in changing this paradigm that you mentioned, both to prevent victims and victimizers?
Yeah, confront entitlement. You have to confront entitlement. I wish the Department of Homeland Security hadn't discovered that catchphrase, if you see something, say something, because that would be good for us. But yeah, if they see something, they have to say something. Like the email I got the other day from that school counselor.
But even before that, during more of socialization of our youth and discovering gender roles do you think we need to have more education in schools, especially late elementary, middle school, to help combat this issue?
That would help. I seldom think institutionally, but if I were forced to think institutionally, I would say, all teacher training has to include a sex trafficking component. That would help, wouldn't it? How many teachers are in HISD? Thousands. So, yeah.
What was that op-ed that you wrote, Emily, about the economy, and what was it?
The breast-based.
The breast-based economy. What do you think about? Wasn't that a good catchphrase?
Yeah, the restaurants. Have you seen those? How do you think that impacts the commercial sex market here in Houston? Because I've seen, from what I've noticed, there seems to be an explosion of those, and I imagine that contributes to the demand for commercial sex and trafficking.
Yeah, Treasures went live in 1996, and our office flipped into a brothel in 1998. And so my hypothesis is that these restaurants and strip clubs anchor the demand in a region around them. So
people often don't make that connection, right? they say, well, there are a lot of strip clubs in Houston, but they don't make the connection that's why there's a lot of trafficking in Houston. But you and I see that connection every day.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
It's sort of like creating a demand.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of taking a woman into the VIP room for, couple $1,000, they just go to $165 shower with Asian lady. You know what I mean? Yeah. It just makes me so mad.
All right, one last question. Anyone have a last question for Kat? Yeah, Katie?
What is some of the reaction you receive when doing your outreach from Johns or from victims?
We haven't had any negative reaction, except one time I sent this guy out. Look, I commit type 1 errors to avoid type 2 errors. You know what I mean? So I send people out sometimes that maybe. So this one guy was out taking pictures out on Bissonnette, and he got pepper sprayed. And I was like, yeah, good. I mean, I bought some milk and washed out his eyes, but I was kind of glad that he got pepper sprayed. What was the question? Oh, reaction. John's and, we're actually kind of friendly with the pimps out there on Bissonnette. Here's why. I don't think that we've sent a ripple. I don't think we've made a ripple.
Has anything made a ripple?
In Sweden?
No, but here in Houston, has anything made a ripple? Seems like we have more awareness organizations than ever before around trafficking.
Yeah.
Has anything, we've passed, 54 pieces of legislation?
Yeah.
We've passed in the last 5 legislative sessions.
Yeah.
Have you seen a ripple anywhere?
No, but I think it's because the demand is outpacing our response to it.
Demand is increasing. Carla, are you seeing a ripple anywhere?
Unfortunately, I don't.
It's almost like we're just discovering a lot of this stuff too, right? It's like we started fighting trafficking and we found the tip of the iceberg, right? It's sort of...
Yeah, the only ripple I've seen is when we first launched the helpline.
Yeah. What's the number?
Nice question.
You should know that off the top of your head.
Yeah, but I don't.
So should I. But I don't even know my office phone number. What is the hotline number? Trafficking?
The national hotline is 1-888-373-7888.
Yeah, that one I know. This one, the local one. So if a girl needs a ride to a safe place, and we can send a team with a cell phone blocker bag and follow car and all that. 713-322-8000 if a girl needs a ride to a safe place.
Oh, that's good.
713-322-8000.
And the national one again?
888-373-7888.
Yeah. Was I answering a question now?
I don't know. I don't remember. We're getting too old, Kat. Very good. Hey, how about a big hand for Kat Brown? Thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thank you for being here in our Advocacy Studio. And all of us have a lot of work to do, right? So keep it up. Keep it up. Thank you.
I so admire people who can work within the sort of institutional framework, because I can't. I have no patience for it. So thank you very much.
I don't know if my office would say I work within the institutional framework, but we try.
You have a suit. I mean, I don't even have a blazer.
Very good. If you have any questions, feel free to come up and talk to Kat.
Thank you, everybody.
So